Hello everyone, welcome to LexTalk.World web conference. Today we have two industry leaders, Ms. Kimberly Halwa. She is a Senior Associate General Counsel at Fairview Health Services, USA. And on the other hand, we have Mr. Samit Gambhir. He is Joint VP Corporate Law and Company Secretary at DCM Shriram Limited, India. So in this session, we highlight and discuss with our experts these pressing issues on privacy, cybersecurity, and data protection law, analyzing the view of risk management in an artificial intelligence world, especially when the whole world is fighting against the deadly virus COVID-19. Welcome, Ms. Kimberly, and welcome, Mr. Samit.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Right. So, Mr. Samit, can you please give us a small introduction about you to our viewers?
Sure. Although you have already given the introduction, I think I don't have much more to say about other than that, except that, I have more than 25 years of experience. I am a law graduate and company secretary working currently with DCM Shriram Limited as their joint vice president, corporate law and company secretary. And I've been handling all kind of legal and corporate law related stuff for almost, more than 2 decades now. I also work with KPMG and Schneider Electric and, few other organizations in their legal department and compliances functions. My office is in New Delhi and I'm currently in New Delhi.
Thank you so much. And what about Ms. Kimberly? Can you please give us a small introduction about yourself?
Sure. I live in Minneapolis and practice in Minneapolis for a large healthcare system that's primarily services all of Minnesota. I am currently senior counsel and I'm responsible for all of the pharmacy services, laboratory services, long-term care, transportation, ambulance services, and a few other parts of the organization. And we often encounter a lot of data privacy issues in the day-to-day healthcare world, specifically, how AI and everything kind of comes together in a healthcare setting.
So I'm pleased to have you both of us with us today and moving forward. So I'll just ask the first question to Kim. So what are the ways of implementation of the organizational objectives applying AI solutions?
Well, for us, for our real world, I can give you a real world example, is for us about 86% of our practitioners within our organization use some form of artificial intelligence to help do a variety of different things. A lot of clinical diagnoses, for example, a lot of specialized medicine also relies on data analytics to find the right drug for the right person or find the right treatment for the right person. And so we at our organization primarily use AI and different techniques like that to improve the care that we provide and to be basically better at what we would otherwise do because we have more information at our fingertips to individualize and treat the individual patients that come to our offices.
Okay. And what's your take on this, Mr. Samit?
So I think, in my view, artificial intelligence is going to be the future. There is no doubt in that. But I think so far as the legal services are concerned, this is still in the stage of evaluating or in the stage of evolution, I would say. But yeah, of course, it really, some of the areas we have started implementing some of the IAS tools and all, and we really see that, how much time we are saving, how much energy we are saving in that. The work of days or weeks can be done in now minutes, basically. But, up to some extent, I also feel that, you see, we are not fully IA-enabled legal function and all. See, you have to see the cost-benefit analysis also at the same time. The moment we grow, as soon as we grow, we'll find, more tools and more IA-related technology is required. But yes, of course, I fully agree that you have to embrace it. This is the future of any function, be it a legal function, be it any other function, frankly.
That's correct. Moving on to the next question.
Okay.
How to ensure the ownership and integrity of the data which we disclose?
So I think I would say that, ownership of data is a very complicated subject, frankly. In typical sense, when we really talk about ownership, meaning of ownership is the possession of anything or the responsibility related to that anything. But whereas in terms of data, there is no possession of a physical possession of a thing, but in the data you really see the value in that, the
Yeah,
value
that's correct.
and the responsibility which comes with the data is actually, there's a lot to do with the ownership of the data, I would say. And plus there's a lot of psychological issues also involved with the data ownership and all. So, I would say that if you are, you have to first define what is the data basically in your organization. What is a sensible data? What is, you think you have to actually control it? What is that you have to actually secure it? So
Right.
it depends who actually is the owner of the data, depending upon the kind of data, depending upon your policies and all. But the value you arrive out of data is something which makes it a little bit more significant. Like, I frankly see that there's a lot of value in data. Everyone says there is a lot of value in data, but never in the balance sheet, you never find in the column of assets that data is also, included in the assets of the organization, including in the cash of the organization. So it has a value. So I think, to define data, then to have policies to secure data, then if you have to transfer the data, how to transfer the data, what kind of SLAs and agreements you should have while you transfer the data, what kind of a control you should have while you are securing the data. So all these things are actually important while you are dealing with the data in an organization, I would say.
And I would add to that, I think the type of data specifically that you're dealing with can make a big difference
Right.
as to the analysis or what needs to be done and what protections need to be put in place. I deal a lot with health data and somebody's, health status or disease status. And at least in the United States, that's sort of given a more protection than other types of data. That being said, you can still get a lot of health information from de-identified data and things like that. So it really, I think you need to, when you're looking at the issue, look at what type of data you're actually dealing with and the sensitivity of that data specifically.
Yeah, that's
And
really
the other aspect, while I was saying, there's a psychological impact or psychological aspect to that also. What I've seen in organizations like, suppose that you are the owner of the data, you are processing some data, you have some data with you, and you want to do something with that data. So there's a lot of fear in you also. Am I breaching the data privacy law? Am I doing something which is good for me or maybe good for my function, but may not be good for whole organization as a whole? So there's a fear factor always when you have a lot of data owners and data, sensitive data is with you. Suppose you are doing any project and you wanted to use your company's own data for something, and you never know that, where you're going to breach the data policy. So there's a psychologically factor also that everyone is very feared now. Oh, it's a data privacy things. No, don't touch it unless you have the CIO's clearance or this and that kind of. That's
Yeah.
also.
yeah, sure. So that's a great learning for our viewers. And moving on to the next question, how to set up a control mechanism on the outcome of using AI to avoid unintended outcomes?
Yeah, so I think the most important, I think, is to build in protection into the design of what you're doing. That's really the place to build in different types of protection. If you need to get consent to use the data, do that then. If you need to limit the use of certain types of data when you're running the data set, that's when you can put those controls into place. They do take people to understand and have the sensitivity to put the right controls in place as they're designing. I think, at least in the United States, it would really be helpful if we had a lot clearer or more robust regulatory system around the privacy and the use of data. We have it in pockets of different areas. Healthcare is one. There are other confidential data, but as a whole, we don't really have a great comprehensive regulatory scheme to help sort of cross the boundaries of different, these different types of industries and things like that.
And what's your thought on this, Mr. Samit?
Yeah, so I think I agree with Kim. There's a lot of things to be taken care in that, but the important thing is that you have to understand, as I already told, you have to understand number one, cost versus benefit of that also, because at this stage we are not fully AI enabled things are there. Plus, in the legal industry, what I feel is that we have to actually change the tradition of lawyering also. Tradition of lawyering is to be completely changed. That maybe the lawyer, the old lawyer like me, or maybe not be so much comfortable about the data at some time, but we are actually learning, and young lawyers are very much, doing all these things. But even I was reading somewhere very interestingly that lawyers, but particularly when this pandemic is in this is there, and COVID-19 and all, so lawyers who are in their 60s and all, maybe generally we see the lawyers are working at the age of 70, 75 very strongly in the courts and legal functions. So they say now this is the time for us to retire, because we don't think that we can take up a lot of things now in lawyering, and everything is now AI based, things are moving, the courts are moving. Tomorrow you never know whether it's a court or it's a computer where we are filing the petitions, and we don't know which computer where we file the petition and file the appeal and all. So I think so in legal function, yes, everything is being changed, and though it will take some time in the legal function, because there are certain things where the human angle is required, or the human brain is definitely required when you analyze the things and all. But having seen the advancement in the technological side, and having seen the where the company has actually come out with the robot which can talk socially with the people, give the human intervention to the people and all. So I'm sure that you can't escape out of that. So you have to
No,
embrace.
it's coming no matter what you're doing. I think it's just going to be part of we're all going to have to integrate it into our lives as it comes.
Absolutely.
There's a lot coming our way, especially to AI.
Correct.
So, moving on to the next thing. So, what's your take on AI and professional liability, Mr. Samir?
So that's a very interesting thing, actually. Why I'm saying, because till now people are not very clear. Even the insurance companies are not clear about it. Risk firms are not clear about it. Professional firms are not clear about it. What to do now? What happens is that if you are doing if you are doing any tool and using any tool for your client services as a professional firm, and by chance something happened, something terribly wrong happened, and some kind of a loss has happened. So one is that, how do you think that it can be covered? Because generally I've seen there are two types of insurances. One is, professional indemnity insurance, generally what we have in the professional firms today, or, the insurances which are for professional management and for directors and official liability insurance types of insurances. But that cover a lot, that may cover the financially, you may be able to financially compensate to your client, by way of insurance company, you have taken an insurance now. But what will happen if there is an injury, For example, I'm talking about professional firm, I'm talking about a doctor. Doctor is using some AI and doing some diagnosis on some patient, and something terribly happened, because of that. It could be he could die also, he or she could die also. So how to compensate that thing, financially you can't really do that. And insurance companies are also they are not very clear, whether we should take these kind of insurance coverage or not. As of now, insurance companies are still doing it, but on a very ad hoc basis, depending upon what their IT person suggests them, saying that this is what it can happen. But in view of advancement of technology, you never know what is going to happen tomorrow. And same with the lawyer firms, in the law firms, you never know what is going to happen. And, we are using some AI tool, which can terribly wrong happen to the client. And, client can, as of now, client can only, generally, if you really see compensation, they ask for the compensation is that you have not dealt the client rightfully, or your juniors have not done well and all. But now you can always say that you have actually done a terrible, wrong on the basis of your AI. So
Yes.
I think as the losses will increase, frankly, those are very silly thing. As the losses will increase, and people will more come to know that what kind of a losses or what kind of a failure the AI is facing, the more insurance company will be able to find out some more product for that. So as of now, it's a very gray area, frankly, professional liability.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I kind of think I see it in sometimes two buckets. So your AI didn't function appropriately or the way that it should have, and then the possibility of a breach too as well. So you have both sides of that, because there's two different places where you could see a company who owns the AI being sort of at risk that you didn't do it correctly, and then or a privacy breach. And both of those, to your point, there really isn't adequate insurance coverage at this point in time. It just hasn't kept up with the technology. And so as things start progressing and there's bigger lawsuits, I'm sure we'll start seeing more and more of the insurance companies coming along and that kind of thing.
I agree. As a professional firm, I can always enter into an agreement with the technology supplier, wherein I can always ask all kind of warranties, indemnities, and all. And technology supplier can also agree to that. But what will happen when somebody faces a loss?
Mm-hmm.
The technology company is not aware that how much insurance he can take, what kind of insurance the technology company will get actually to compensate that. And if they don't agree with these kind of clauses, they don't get business also, So somehow you will have to agree with these clauses also, wherein they indemnify or they warranty something. So yes, so this area has to still evolve, I think, in terms of the liability or coverage of tools or technology.
Yeah, there's particularly in the healthcare space for us, there's quite a bit of,
Yes.
How do you parse out the physician's decision making when they're relying on, say, an algorithm that's saying, this person has heart disease or whatever.
Right.
There is responsibility on the physician to use their own professional judgment, but then they're also using this tool that's giving them guidance. And so where do you split that liability if something in that chain goes wrong?
So there was a case. IBM has produced one of the AI product, which was basically used for the radiology, of the patient and all. And there's so much of the data there. That AI has studied so much of the radiology reports, billions of radiology reports, that it can immediately capture, what is inside whether there is a tumor or not in the lungs and all. And so what will happen? Suppose, if that person, if that AI is doing something and something wrong happens, the person, they have the tumor, person's AI says, no, there is no tumor, we are actually clearing it. So it's a terrible wrong happen. And, recently we've seen that US there was a quiz show of Jeopardy, wherein the Watson, it's a AI tool by the IBM, I think. So that AI tool actually won the quiz, defeating all the participants, and it was not even connected to internet. It was only on the basis of information provided in that tool that, Watson has actually won that quiz game. And it was very much in the news, the Jeopardy game,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So why algorithmic decision making should shift from the black box to the glass box, and how to do it?
Well, I think it goes back to, it goes to reliability and the ability to track back where something went wrong. I think when you have black box algorithms, you're not able to trace the decision making of the computer mind, and it leaves you with doubt, and it leaves you with an inability to. It's not transparent. You don't know how it works. It's hard to trust something where where you're not feeling comfortable, where you can see the line of sight. And so I think we need to move to glass box, where basically glass box algorithms, where you can see the thinking of the computer and we can trace back, hey, this is where maybe something went wrong. I think it also will help identify bias and social bias that we may have in AI or in the data that comes out of the AI. So I think the transparency of having an algorithm that can be traced and identified and understood is just provides us with a way more transparency and accuracy and an ability basically to understand the whole process and the whole thinking of the computer or the system.
Yeah, that's absolutely transparency. It's very required here. So, and one more thing, how do we install, as you mentioned about bias and discrimination, so how do we install a mechanism to check on that?
That's a really good question and a really hard question to answer, because I think there's different along the chain. There's different opportunities for bias in the creation of the program. There may be some opportunity for even just the question you ask the AI to, or what you ask the AI to perform may be biased. so if you're asking the AI to do its calculations or do what it does, and you ask it the wrong question, there's bias there. So, and then as you move on, when you have the data or you have the information that's coming out of the AI, how you choose to interpret that and use that can definitely be subject to individual biases. I think for me, it really comes down to the user, less so than the AI. I think the AI is meant to, to do what you ask it to do. And so the user individually needs to be aware and to be self-aware that, there may be bias in the questions that you're asking, and try, what do you need to do to make those, what do you need to do to ask the right questions so it's not a biased question and leading you to a biased answer.
Oh, I fully agree. It's absolutely on the user, because you never know what is going to happen, what is inside the computer, what is inside the system. You don't know. Unless and until it's basically, the user itself has to decide, or user himself has to decide that how to remove the bias actually. So there's no, I wouldn't say there's any particular way of doing that. It's a lot to do with the culture of the organization. It's a lot to do with the integrity of the people. It's a lot to do with the organization to organization. But yes, it's only up to the user and the people who are using to that data. Is basically, that's how you can actually handle this bias related situation. Otherwise, for AI or for computer, everyone is same. Every organization is same. It has to deliver what it has to deliver basically.
Rightly so. What are the ethical standards of conduct, and how to enforce compliance?
So yes, I think there has to be a process for it. I would say, it has to be a structure for this because this is actually a very, very important thing nowadays, and there's a lot of risk associated with this if you are not into the compliance of that. So I would say there has to be structured process. You have to make a process, and while making the process, while sitting in your corner office, in your air-conditioned office, you can't really make the process, frankly. For making this process for the compliances and to ensure these things, you need to meet people. You need to understand where the risk arises. You need to go and meet, maybe marketing guys, maybe supply chain people, maybe other people in the organization. Try and understand that what kind of a risk they think that they're the potential risk or associated with these kind of things. And then, so you have to make a process for that. Then you have to make somebody as a process owner for that. And then I would say the telling the people or, training the people, informing the people is very important. The kind of workshop you should take, training with the people, communication to the people is very, very important. That, what is you supposed to do, what are you not supposed to do. A whistleblower mechanism, if they see any default or if they see any non-compliance, they should be encouraged. They should be saying that, you have to report that if there is anything. So I think all these things make a successful compliance program, I would say. But yes, it has to be reviewed every year. Maybe I would say every half year, because you never know what new kind of a non-compliance or new kind of a thing can happen. Suppose for example, very simple, you launch a new product, you go into the new market, there could be a new risk associated with everything, You go for restructuring, there could be a new risk associated with this. So unless you are reviewing it very frequently, you can't be a successful program processor.
There should be a proper process to follow.
Absolutely, I think I fully agree.
And the one thing you said that stands out to me is the need to identify somebody who is responsible for the compliance itself, and not forget that piece of it. A lot of companies want to just start using the technology, but not to sort of forget that, yes, there is a need for someone or some resource to be monitoring and correcting and doing all the things that you had said, and not to forget to have that resource available as you start to, increase the amount of AI you have in your organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah, agree.
So moving on to the next question. So this is very interesting. So can AI be used as a tool to safeguard and secure our servers from cyber attacks?
You know what? I'm sure it can.
It can,
I'm
it
sure
cannot.
there are
I mean,
lots of smart
there's,
people that can figure out a way to make that happen. I don't have any specific ideas on how to make it happen, but I'm absolutely sure that that is something that would come out of AI. For that the technology is a way to, to look at that kind of thing.
yeah, because somehow these attacks, up to some extent, yes, there could be some AI technology, but somehow, these attackers are also getting more and more advanced, I would say, and they they also know that what is the latest in the market and what new is to be developed, and so the lawbreakers are generally more smarter than the lawmakers at some times. We have heard that in legal languages. So I think up to some extent, yes, whatever we AI technology is using in, I would hopefully I would find a day where you are attack free, but I don't see that very soon, frankly. Attacks will continue to have.
They're always two
To
step
your
ahead
point,
from
They
us.
are. They are.
yeah, to your point, I think that cyber attacks are always evolving. So to the extent something works today, it's not going to work tomorrow. Or once something works once, they're going to use it again until it doesn't work. So if AI is going to help, then it's going to have to fluctuate, or not fluctuate, but it's going to have to evolve in the same way as sort of some of the new schemes to obtain data evolve.
So, what kind of impact will breach of security have on employees of an organization?
Very severe, in fact, and not so severe also at the same time. But yes, it's again a very tricky question. So it depends, the sensitivity of the data, frankly. It depends on the type of data. It depends on the local regulations. What do we have in place in the local area, the country? It depends where the data is being processed. Depends who is controller of the data. So everything happens. But yes, I think the consequences are really severe. Because something data is something which can do wonders. Actually, you never know what's going to happen if there is any breach. Kim.
Yeah, I mean, a breach could be devastating to an organization, or it could be very small. To your point, I mean, it just really depends on the size and the severity of the breach. But yeah, it's very conceivable and very likely it could be devastating to a company financially and reputation wise. Just may not be able to survive something a very severe breach. Other companies who have huge financial resources, like a Wells Fargo or something like that, or I'm trying to think of other organizations, but probably would be able to survive, but it would definitely damage their bottom line.
Yeah, and particularly when you are dealing with the personal data, or the sensitive data of your clients and all, so then of course,
Yeah.
lead to a big attack. It can lead to a very severe consequences, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
true. So, now moving on to the last question, how to use AI to control risk management, especially during the time of COVID-19. So this is the real one, and I would ask Kim.
So before Kim actually answers this question, I would like to say that in the COVID-19 era, what I really feel is that we are where we were thinking that we will reach in 2025. We have already reached there, frankly, in terms of technology. I would say, she can answer better on that. In my lifetime as a company secretary, I never had a board meeting sitting at my residence in front of my computer. And we had the complete board meeting, all kind of a big meeting sitting at my residence. Chairman is sitting on his residence and all. So we have become so much used to the technology now, which we were thinking that, it will happen in 2015, 2030 something. And now everyone is so, used to this technology. And this has become a normal now. So COVID-19 has actually, we have actually learned a lot from this situation, I would say. Though it's very unfortunate to have these kind of a disease here, and globally our economy is going to face a lot. But yes, in terms of, it's a deep dive into your own, way of doing things, not only technologically, but otherwise, in terms of savings the thing, in terms of, how to handle the situations, how to handle lockdown, how to handle these kind of a situation. So I think we have reached up to that level which we were not even thinking, and this has come suddenly. So we had to face it immediately.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree. Things have moved in, 4 months where I would have never, would have thought it would have been 5-10 years before we would have got there, particularly with all these meetings and things, over the teleconference and interesting things. The one thing for me that COVID-19 is sort of, I think, brought to the forefront, which is probably very beneficial, is at least in the United States, we have this sort of protectionist attitude about personal health data, but now we're sort of starting to see things like, hey, it's not a bad idea to track temperatures. Or there was a company with a thermometer who was being able to track the spread of COVID by temperature spikes, and those sort of big aggregated data. Where you can show the disease, the contact tracing, and all that stuff is now something that's becoming a lot more familiar to people. And I think making it clear that there's a need to move a little bit in that direction, at least for the United States, we do need to use some of this data as we have just recently in COVID, as quickly as we could. I don't know that we weren't prepared and didn't have as much as we should, but to use that type of data to, secure the public health, make sure people are healthier, for a lot of, there's a whole bunch of different things we can use that type of societal data for, particularly around diseases, but we can also use it to track, poverty or environmental disasters and things like that. And all of that, I think, is now, at least in the public's mind, that, oh gosh, maybe we don't need so much protection. We need some of the protection we need is on a societal level and not necessarily on an individual level.
And and also to coming back to your original question, that in terms of control of risk management, I would say that, of course, it has been very challenging to ensure the compliances, to ensure the risk management system, of course, because it has suddenly happened and the things which were in the process suddenly stopped. But somehow we have managed to do a lot of things in terms of that. Initially we were thinking that, oh, this is a compliance thing, wait for the lockdown to get over and then we'll look into that. But when we realized that this is not going to over so soon, so we have, started doing a lot of compliances activities and compliance management things and risk management things and trainings to the people also online now. And we are trying to ensure that nothing is breached, all the risk, systems are in place, the controls are tested and all. So this also we have started doing finally, so I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our physical lives are totally dependent on the World Wide Web now. So with this, I would like to thank you, both of you, for joining us and for sharing all the information from different parts of the world. So you have covered all the subjects from the Indian perspective, and Kim, you have covered all the topics from the US perspective. And for our viewers, for more exciting content on various topics, please visit our website, that is LexTalk.World. And you can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube, that is Click Creators. Thank you.